Well, hello again. I'm back. And I wasn't expecting to be back so soon. I said that last time, I think. Things are happening at a very fast rate, and ridiculous things are happening. Now, I'm of an age where I remembered a satirical programme. That was the week that was. David Frost, Millicent Martin, Bernard Levin, Roy Kinnear, Willie Rushton. Looking back on the week, God knows what would they have done with a week like this one. That programme was a bit of a forerunner, really, of Spitting Image in the 80s, or whatever Spitting Image was. Now, I ended my last video more or less talking about we were going into the transition negotiation period. And that seemed to me to be okay. Things were quieted down for a few weeks. There won't be much happening. Something will come out from the negotiations. They might start in 10 days' time or whatever. And let's see what happens then. So there wouldn't be much to say about Brexit. It would be a dull week or 10 days. How wrong I was. First of all, Barnier reminded Mrs May, look, there are outstanding issues from the Phase 1 agreement. It's got to be set in stone, which it isn't. It must be set in legal terms, and it isn't. And that has got to be done as soon as possible. And in fact, he went on to say, if that doesn't happen, if what was agreed in Phase 1 is not set in legal terms, perfectly possible that transition might not happen. So that's where we were over the weekend. Quiet times, maybe. Monday, the impact leak. The impact study report of 3 scenarios, 3 likely modelling scenarios that would be the options for the government to consider. WTO terms, free trade agreement terms, or remaining in the customs union single market. On each one of them, there were negative findings. It would hurt and damage this country, varying from 8% under WTO to 2% under remaining in the customs union, compared to the projections of future growth as they are now. Okay, it was a forecast. And forecasts can be wrong. But somebody's got to do it. Doesn't matter whether you're a big corporation, a multinational or whatever. People have got to be assessing and making forecasts. And within a day or so, another leak came out, which said that if the immigration system is strengthened, the impact of that on our economy would be worse than any future deal we will have with Trump and the USA. And by the way, any future deal with the USA, the projection on that is very minimal. Something like 0.2% impact on our economic growth. Indeed, I have read many a time that if we combine 4 or 5 other countries such as India, Brazil, South Africa, and 1 or 2 others together with America, they would not anywhere compare to make up for the loss of leaving the single market and the customs union. But be that as it may for now, I'll come back to trade on another day. So this report came out. Doom and gloom. You can imagine what some of the papers said about it, and the others tried to deal with it professionally as much as was allowed to be released, because no one has seen it yet other than Mrs May and a few others, and the people who wrote it, obviously. Mrs May went to China. On the way over to China, she said, we're not going to publish this. It's far too early. It's only half completed. There was a lot more work to be done to it. needs much more fine-tuning, much more detail. We're not going to publish it. The Labour Party said, do you think so? And Keir Starmer, if you remember, put down that motion, binding motion, for it to be published. And like the last one of last November, this one has also been published. Will have to be given to Hilary Benn's Brexit committee. MPs will have to go to a secret room, stripped almost of everything they have to copy anything, to read them. It's a ridiculous situation. We are dealing with the lives of people. We are dealing with the industries of this country. We are dealing with the future of our young people. We are dealing with so many aspects of our economic, social and political life. And the people who the Leavers said we want to bring back control to them can't see, are not allowed to see it and watch it properly. Anyway, that's another issue, again, for another day. So Steve Baker, I've watched him once or twice before. He's got a very unfortunate snigger on his face when he speaks, a bit like his boss, David Davis. They think he's all a bit of a joke, a bit of a laugh, to try and kid Parliament along, try and fool Parliament. He came along and he said, what's all the fuss about? In the first place, Mr. Davis and myself, we've barely seen it yet. And secondly, aren't all these reports wrong? So he proceeded to rubbish it. Like all sorts of forecasts, they're all wrong throughout the decades. So first of all, you see, the judges were rubbished last year. Then the experts were rubbished. Now the civil servants, his own people who are doing the work, they are being rubbished. The Scottish Government, the Bank of England, the Lord Mayor of London's report, impact report, the three studies are in the same ballpark in terms of the impact. But it's all rubbish. It doesn't suit the message. So they shoot the messenger. Well, that was okay. He got away with that one, even though he shouldn't have. He shouldn't have defended his own civil servants, not criticised them and dismissed them in that way. But the following day, he went further. In answer to a question from his big mate Rees-Mogg, because they're all part, there's about 30, 40 of them, who are part of this European research group. And he, along with this new lady who's now in the Brexit department, Miss Fernandez, they are members of it. And Mogg, the member for the 19th century, said someone, and Chris Bryan said, no, member for the 17th century, but be that as it may. Mogg said, do you remember? He said to Steve Baker, do you remember we were told once in a meeting that these civil servants deliberately chose a particular economic model that was bound to lead to a doomsday scenario? Now, as he got up to answer that question, it is either rumoured one or two things. David Davis was sitting next to him, if you watch the videos, is apparently either to have told him, don't answer it, or something like, you haven't got to answer it. But of course he answered it. And he said, oh yes, I recall that. And he went on and he got into deep trouble then. Deeper trouble than the day before. Actually, it's a sacking offence. But Mrs May has decided that it's not a sacking offence because he hasn't broken the ministerial code, because the ministerial code says if you're willing to apologise and retract to Parliament, then all will be well. And apparently that's what he's done today. He's apologised But the damage has been done, isn't it? We all know what happens with headline stories of all kinds, and then the apology appears as a 2-inch statement at the bottom of a page. And the same happens here. The apology doesn't get the same publicity as the accusation, as what was said. But Mrs. May was in China. And remember now, she wasn't going to publish this report, but she was forced to. Now, let's come to the matter of the leak. What surprises me is how quiet everyone is about the leak. Time was, if there were leaks of this kind of government papers, there would be a big issue about it. It's all quiet. I have my suspicions, because this morning it has emerged that Mrs. May knew about this scenario before Christmas. She knew that this report was going to be a doomsday sort of report before Christmas. And she had a cunning plan. Like Baldrick, she had a cunning plan. She was going to show it to her Brexit committee, what they call the Brexit War Committee, sometime this week, to tie them in, to give them all the warnings and the forebodings, how bad things could be, to get Gove and Fox and Johnson, on the defensive. That was the intention, but it didn't happen like that, of course, because of other events. So where has the leak come from? And now we await next week's 2-day cabinet discussion. 2 days on the trade deal. What do we want? And remember what Lord Bridges said, unless we know what we want, unless that is sorted out first, the future is so uncertain. And everything about it is uncertain. It's very worrying. I'll finish with that now. We will leave it there. We will watch what happens next week, remembering always Lord Bridges' statement that we are as if on a gangplank up in the air. That's pretty much how it is, actually. There we go. Cheers.